Welcome to the Koach Katlyn Show. I'm your host, Koach Katlyn, and I'm so excited you are here today. I promise that I don't normally show up to the show in a robe or a little pajama headpiece, but I promise I'm going to explain why I have that on in just a moment. But I am so excited. I want you to know that the Koach Katlyn Show exists for your future. I'm for your success in the areas of life, love, and leadership. Sometimes that'll be me teaching just like I am right now with a cup of coffee in this office, and sometimes it's going to be having special guest co-host on. So that's how the show is structured, but all of it's designed for your future. And a lot of people ask me, they say, well, what is a coach? What is a coach? You know, we know what a sports coach is. We may not all know what they do because, hello, blondes. But a coach helps players be their best. But I found this definition of a life coach, and I couldn't have said it better myself. It says a coach is a passionate, dedicated individual who unlocks hidden potential and maximizes a person's performance. A passionate individual who maximizes a person's performance by believing, encouraging, and developing them. You see, I believe that there is treasure inside of you that needs to be lifted out, and that's why I am Koach Katlyn, that's Coach with a K, to help you and be with you in this journey of growing and becoming all that God's called you to be. Okay, so how can we stay connected? Before we dive into today's show and you figure out why the heck this girl on TV has her robe on, I want us to stay connected throughout the week. I love to encourage, not just on this show, but throughout the week. So let's stay connected on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Koach Katlyn, that's Coach with a K. Also, I encourage you and invite you to come hang out on my online home, KoachKatlyn.com. That's Coach with a K /the show. KoachKatlyn.com /the show. And there you're going to be able to, again, find out how we can stay connected on social media. You'll be able to see the 2 books, resources to the 2 books so you can grow beyond the show. Habits, Not Hopes, the 10 essential daily habits for every person to have to take their habits and hopes and bring them together. And then Slay and Pray, a 15 days of how to slay the enemy in 15 days of praying, a 30 wonderful day devotional. You can find out how to have me come speak at your youth or women's event or church or a community event. I'd love to come speak in your area. And then also there's a place for you to watch past episodes and also leave a testimony if God's done something miraculous. We want to hear it, and different ways you can partner with us. Again, that's KoachKatlyn.com /the show. Okay. So now that that's all out of the way, I want to talk to you today on the topic of dream to destiny. It's time to deliver. Dream to destiny. It's time to deliver. You know, one time I was at church with one of my dearest friends growing up. Her name's Kayla. And we came from different faith backgrounds of what went on in our churches. So at my church, it was super common for prophecy to happen. And she went to a church that was great, but prophecy was just a little less likely to happen at their church. And so I remember she came to visit me. My husband and I were on staff at a church in Virginia Beach. And she came to visit me all the way from Georgia. And she was there, and there was this guy, and he's a great guy, but he came in there. She was not married at the time. She wasn't even dating at the time. And I still laugh thinking about this. He comes into the office and he looks at her and he says, God would say, you are pregnant. And I looked at her like, hey, like, is there something I need to know? And she looked at me like, there's no way I'm pregnant. And it was a whole funny thing. But his point was, she was pregnant with a promise that God was going to deliver through her. She was pregnant with a promise that God was going to deliver to her. But we laugh into it in this moment because there was no way physically she was pregnant, but God did have a promise to birth through her. And so we just always make that, we always say that's so funny that he came up and said, you're pregnant. And she was like, there's no way. But I came to tell you guys today that you are pregnant with a purpose, that God has a plan, that God has a purpose for your life, that there is a destiny that God has on your life that he wants to deliver through you. I remember my son just turned 1, and I remember When I found out I was pregnant, and I know a lot of people are in an infertility, some people are in an infertility process, and I do not say this lightly, and I don't say this I did a whole episode you can go back and look at on hope and infertility, but I was not in a moment of where I was really trying to get pregnant or expecting to get pregnant, but my husband and I did get pregnant, or I got pregnant, and my husband played a role. That's all I'll say. But I remember going to the doctor, and all I got to say is it was a 2020 baby, that everybody had the shock of the pandemic, but I had the shock of pregnancy. And I remember going to the doctor, and I went because I had broken a rib earlier, and there was still some issues with the rib, and so I went and I was going to get an x-ray, and this was how clueless I was. She was like, "Are you pregnant?" I was like, "No." And she's like, "Well, is there a chance?" I was like, "No." And which, like, technically there was, and I was like, "No, there's no way." And so she said, "Well, just protocol, you have to go take a pregnancy test." And so I took a pregnancy test, and she came back in, and I'll never forget, she said, "We can't give you an x-ray." And I'm like, "Why? Like, I have so much to do today. I need to know why my rib keeps hurting. Like, why can't you give me an x-ray?" And she's like, "You're pregnant." I was like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." And she's like, "No, you are." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I argued with her for an hour. I wept, I cried. It was a whole situation. And then the next day I told my husband after, she was like, I argued with her about how accurate the pregnancy test was, but the point was is that in that moment it became, the seed was there and the pregnancy had begun the process. There are some of you, either today's the beginning process, you've been in the process, but there is some promise inside of you. Now, husbands, don't freak out. I'm not saying that your wife is pregnant right now. All I'm saying is that those of you watching this program today, I felt in my spirit as I was preparing for this show that God would say to you, "You're pregnant. You are pregnant with a purpose." And you've been in a process, you've been in a long-term process of waiting, but today it is time to deliver. Ecclesiastes in 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." For everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. You know, there was a season, it was a season of pregnancy and a pandemic. I found out I was pregnant, but I didn't give birth the next day. There was a process of growing this human, and every woman who's ever carried a child, you know that it's a certain growth process. Things start not fitting. You can't getting up in the chair. I wore stiletto heels. I will say I was committed up until 2 weeks before, and then I just couldn't stand up. Then I was a runner and I couldn't run. I started not being balanced on the treadmill. You grow and you get uncomfortable. You grow and you get uncomfortable in the process. And it's a long process. It's a 9-month process. And some of you watching today, you've been pregnant with a purpose, and it seems like you've been in a process. It seems like you've heard this promise from God, like you're going to do this. This is what's going to happen. You're pregnant with this. I was pregnant with a child. You're pregnant with a purpose, a plan, a passion, this business, this ministry, this book, this uncommon, unusual purpose, as my husband was preaching on a few weeks ago. You are pregnant, and you've been in a process, and the process from the promise to from the pregnancy announcement, from knowing you're pregnant, there's a process of growth before its delivery, and that process is not always comfortable. There's some fun times in the process. You get to kind of eat what you want. You get to do different fun things, and in the process from when you're pregnant with the purpose and the plan God has for you, there is a process, and it can be uncomfortable. You know, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. Sometimes you're like, God, I need a word just to get through this day. You told me that this was going to happen, and that this was going to come out at the end, but this process, I stepped out in faith, and now I can't pay my bills. I stepped out in this promise, and now I'm dealing with this. What is going on? But see, you're pregnant. There's a season for that. You find out you're pregnant, the seed is planted. You find out your purpose, the seed is planted. Then you go through the process of growing the seed, growing the season. There's a season for the process of growing the seed. There's a season for the process of growing that purpose God has for you. And then there is a season for delivery. There is a season when the promise has been promised. The seed has been planted. You found out you were pregnant with that purpose. You've gone through the process, and then it comes time for delivery. And can I tell you something? Delivery is messy. Every woman said yes. Delivery of a baby and delivery of your purpose is messy. That's why I couldn't show up in like a perfect dress today, because trust, honey, when I went in to deliver, it was not, I didn't even have makeup on like this, but it was pulling the hair back. It wasn't the hair perfect. It was pulling the hair back. It was in the robe. It was getting on something comfortable, getting that hospital gown. Why? Because when it's time to deliver the promise, it gets messy. When it's time to deliver the promise, it gets messy. I came, and this is like my example, my props to show you that you have gone from the pregnancy through the process of being pregnancy. And when I refer in this show to pregnancy, I mean physical pregnancy, but I mean the dream and the purpose God has planted, the seed of promise that God's planted in you. And you've gone through the process of growing it. And I'm here to declare to you today, every person watching this screen, that promise you've got seeded with, and then the process you went through. Today, it's time for delivery. And the delivery is not going to be easy. You know, when I found out I was pregnant, nothing really changed, except I started like not getting to have as much coffee and different things like that. Then as the process went on, I began to go through changes. There were uncomfortable changes. There were different changes. But when it came time to delivery, it was time to roll up my sleeves and get messy. The delivery of the promise, when the promise was the closest, when my son, Richard Asher, was the closest, the process got messy. Why? Because it was time to deliver. I want you to look at your neighbor and say, it's time to deliver. And you may not have a neighbor, so just talk to the pillow next to you. But Luke 2:6, and this is the scripture of when Mary, the mother of Jesus, she had been pregnant. She got told by the angel that she was pregnant with the Son of God. Miraculous conception. And then she went through the process of being pregnant. I would have been like, God, why the heck do I have to sit on a donkey? Read the story if you haven't, but Mary had to be on a donkey at like 9 months pregnant. Like, why? But anyway, she's like on the donkey, and then it says this, Luke 2:6. Luke 2:6. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. The pregnancy season was over. The conception was over. The pregnancy was over. It was time to deliver. It was the season, just like we read Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season. It was time. Her time had come to deliver. I came to tell somebody watching this today that the time has come for you to deliver. You had the conception phase of what God's called you to do. You went through the process of growing that seed, but now it is time to deliver. It is time to deliver. I remember when it was time to deliver my son. It was like, I went into the hospital. I had no problem. I was 39 weeks. I didn't even think about it. Like, I was going to finish his room that weekend. I was going to pack my bags, the next weekend. We had already talked about another induction date, and because she was like, oh, every appointment I went to, oh, you're still pregnant. No, you haven't dilated. No, you're probably going to, go over, and we're going to have to induce. And so for those of you who don't know, when you are pregnant and those last several weeks of pregnancy, you go to see your doctor every week so they can check on how you're doing. And so I didn't think anything about it, honestly, because it was during the COVID time. My husband couldn't come into any of my appointments, and he had driven me every single time to my appointments, even though he had to sit in the parking lot, which was so sweet of him. But it was also sweet of me to carry a child, so it was a fair trade. But I remember going that day, and I was just like, hey, babe, why don't you stay here to work on your sermon? He's a pastor, and Fridays are a big deal. And so I was like, hey, why don't you just stay here to work on your sermon? I'll run down to the doctor, and then I'll come back and meet you. We'll go to lunch and hang out. And so I went to the doctor, and when I got there, she was like, hey, your blood pressure's out the roof. And so it kept being out the roof, and they kept testing it, and she had me like lay back, and it kept being above what it needed to be. And she was like, hey, you know, we're going to have to admit you to monitor you to see if we need to induce labor if you or your baby are in stress. And I was like, and at that point they had told you to like come with your bags packed, but I didn't. So I was like, hey, you know, my husband is at home. I haven't packed a bag. Can like I go home and monitor it and then just see what happens? And she was like, yeah, I'll let you go. She made sure it was down to like a comfortable rate. She's like, I'll let you go. But if your blood pressure stays high, then I'm going to need you to come in tonight, and we're going to begin to induce labor. And so I was like, okay. So I thought that my blood pressure would go down. I mean, I had fought Atlanta traffic, so that was like blood pressure. So I went home and laid down, took a Tylenol, took a nap, and my blood pressure just didn't go down. And so I called her, and I was like, hey, this is what my blood pressure is. And she's like, okay, you're going to have to come in. We're going to have to induce labor. You're going to deliver. And I was like, okay. And in the meantime, me and my husband, I was like, babe, I know that she said I need to come down to deliver, but in pure girl fashion, I was like, hey, I got to get my nails done. They were not done, and I need to get my nails done because I'm not going to be happy delivering a baby if my nails aren't done. And so it was a long process of getting down there. But the point was, my day had come to deliver. I found out in March I was pregnant, and November 1st, it was time to deliver. But what happened was October 30th was my delivery date. That's when they began to induce it, and it was a process. But like Luke 2:6 says, it was time to deliver. The day had come for it to be delivered. And so I want to talk to you about 3 steps as I kind of navigate you through the story of my delivery. Not detailed. I'm not showing videos, so just stay on the channel. But go through, because I believe that there are those of you watching today. Again, there's been the conception phase, there's the process, but now it is time to deliver. Luke 2:6, the time has come for you to deliver. And so there are 3 steps to deliver. Number 1, there's a pain. The pain. When it's delivery time, there is like this last minute pain. And every woman who's ever had a baby said, amen. No, I didn't have a natural birth. I naturally chose an epidural, and I naturally got the epidural, and I naturally used the epidural, but there was pain before. I began to feel those contractions. There were all these situations that they put me through to induce delivery, and I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain, and even my epidural wore off, and I was in a lot of pain. But pain was a part of the delivery process. Pain was a part of the delivery process. Can I tell you that when it comes time to deliver the very thing that God has given you the conception, and you've gone through the process to grow it, when you get time to deliver, there is going to be pain. I love the quote that says, pain is temporary. It may last a minute or an hour or a day, or for me, 32 hours or a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. So eventually it's going to subside. The pain's going to go away. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. If I quit, it lasts forever. I couldn't let the pain make me not deliver. I had to deliver what was inside of me, or little Richard Asher wasn't going to be healthy. We have to realize that there is pain closest to the delivery of our dream. There is pain. You can use an epidural. You can have it naturally, but there is going to be pain when you're closest to deliver. I remember being in so much pain, and when the epidural wore off, I was so sick. It was a process. It was a painful process, but I endured the pain. Why? Because delivery time had come. I'm here to tell you, I'm not speaking negative over you. I'm just here to tell you that if you may be experiencing very difficult pain in your life right now, and that's because you're about to deliver the purpose. You may be in pain right now, but that's because you're about to deliver the purpose. Get messy, deal with the pain, because you're about to deliver your promise. So number 1, there's pain. You're going to experience pain in delivery. And all the men are like, wait, what? And there is going to be pain in delivery. The second thing that's going to happen when your day has come to deliver, number 2, you're going to have to get into position. You're going to have to get into position. I'm not going to go into details, but when it was time to deliver, I had to go into position and I had to be ready. You know, they were like, you know, you can push out the baby, and sometimes people push anywhere between 5 minutes to 3 hours, and they're like, most women are somewhere in between. After 32 hours of labor, I pushed 3 hours, and I'm going to remind my son of that anytime a girl tries to come near him, that mama pushed for 3 hours, so I'm the queen of his heart. But anyway, 3 hours of pushing. I had to keep pressing. I had to keep pushing. Why? Because I had to get my son from inside of me to this world. And can I tell you something, that after you're going through the pain, you've got to get in position to deliver your promise. That may mean you need to get in position in a different relationship. You may need to get in position at work. You may need to get in position in prayer. You may need to get in position to worship. You may need to get in position like another job situation or whatever it is. Some of you watching this today, you're in the pain, but you're not in position. And I'm here to tell you, it's time to take step 2, because your time has come to deliver. You've got to go from just the pain, and you've got to get in position to deliver. And let me tell you, this is like a little side note, a little commercial. You need to make sure when you get in position to deliver, you have the right people around you. That you have the right people around you. Because I remember growing up, I remember the process, I remember being in that room, getting position to deliver. And I remember that, there was a time when my doctor came in and she said, I'm sorry, but you're not going to you're going to have to do a C-section. There is nothing wrong with a C-section. There's no problem with a C-section. But when it is time to deliver, I didn't have a peace about a C-section. And so, long story short, moms, when you've been in delivery moment, you're just ready. Any help will help you deliver this baby. And so I was able to get midwives to come into the room, and they repositioned me. They worked with me, even with the epidurals, so that I could position and make the shift to get in position how I wanted and felt that was best to deliver my promise, my son, Richard Asher. Can I tell you, you need to make sure in this process, make sure in this situation that you are in position and around the right people so that you can deliver the promise the way God has given you peace to deliver your promise. So that God can give you peace on how to deliver your promise and get you in the right position. So when it comes to delivery, you're going to go through pain. I went through extreme pain. You're going to experience pain when it comes to delivering your promise. Then number 2, you're going to have to get in position. And you may be in that position 5 minutes or 3 hours or 3 weeks, but you've got to get in position, because at the bottom line is that whether you do it for 3 hours, 3 weeks, once you have begun to have contractions, once it's time for your promise that God has given you to be delivered, it's going to get messy, and you're going to have to get in position and stay in position until that promise gets from one side to the other, until that promise gets from conception and the growth to being delivered fully and in front of your eyes. You've got to get in position. And I don't know who this is for or who has to get in position, but you have to get in a different position. You've been waiting on this promise. You've heard it from conception. You've been in the process, but you've got to get in position to deliver this promise. And you've got to get committed. Again, you have to get committed to the position that you're in and be willing to stay there and fight for it. There are some of you, mom, that the promise you're ready to deliver is that child coming home, that child coming back, that addict being set free, or that marriage being healed. You got to get in position to fight it out, to push it out, to push as long and as hard as it takes to deliver the promise. So number 1, when the time comes to deliver, which I believe it's your time to deliver the promise God's given you, you're going to experience pain. There's going to be excruciating pain. There are no epidurals in the kingdom of God. There's only prayer. feel like that's going to be a line. There's no epidurals in the kingdom of God, but there is prayer. There's going to be pain. Number 2, you're going to have to get in position. I couldn't stay the same way I had my whole process. I had to get in a different position to deliver my son, and you're going to have to get in a different position to deliver your promise and be willing to stay in that position until the promise comes out. Until the promise comes out. And here's the best part. After you've done the pain, after you've been in position, whether it's 5 minutes, 3 weeks, to push out that promise. Number 3, you get the last P and the best one, the possession. You get to hold that promise. You get to cradle that promise and rock that promise in your arms, but, so to speak. You know, when they put Asher on my chest, I did forget about the labor. I did forget about the pain. Why? Because I had possessed the promise. My time, as it said in Luke 2:6, had come for me to deliver. Your time had come for you to has come for you to deliver. From conception to the process, it's time to deliver. But you're going to have to go through the pain. It's going to get messy. You can't look all pretty in delivery. It's going to get messy, and you're going to go through, number 1, pain. You're going to experience pain when it's time to deliver. That's okay. Number 2, you're going to have to get in a different position. How you've been doing things, you can't continue to do things, because when it comes to deliver, you have to get in a different position. And then number 3, the best thing is you get the possession of the promise. John 16:21. This is one of my favorite scriptures. A woman, when she is in labor, has sorrow because her hour has come. And every woman who's ever been in labor says, yes, we agree with the sorrow has come. But as soon as she has given birth to a child, she no longer remembers the anguish for the joy that a human being has been into the world. She forgets the pain. She forgets the uncomfortable position she had to be in. Why? Because she's holding the promise. Can I tell you, when you may have sorrowed, when your hour comes, and your hour is here now, but I promise you that as soon as you hold that promise, whether it is a physical child, whether it's a business, whatever promise God's given you, and it's time to deliver, when you hold that promise in your hand, you're not going to remember the pain. You're not going to remember the uncomfortable position you had to be in to push that promise out. But you are going to be joyfully embracing the possession that you fought for years to push out. So keep pushing. It's time to deliver. The season has come for you to deliver. Endure the pain. Get in the new position to deliver, and you will possess the promise God's given you. I hope we can stay connected. Go to CoachKatlyn.com/the show. I'll see you next time.